Good evening, folks. We another Tuesday, Creative Financing with JB. We got some great guests with us today. Senator Eric Buckson. We got my man, Commander General Rodney Little. And stuff. And man, it's great. Another great Tuesday. Good conversation. Good folks that we're just going to talk about and have the opportunity so y'all can be introduced to Senator Buckson. He can give you a little bit of his background, his history. You know, we're excited to see what he's doing out here. I know it's a hard work. He's in that nice sunshine. You know, we always want to be there. And I'm going to let him introduce himself right quick. Go ahead, Senator Buckson. Introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, as it was stated, Senator Eric Buckson, but I just go by Eric. That's good for me. I'm a lifer down here in Kent County. I've been around a little bit. I lived down in Alabama a little bit, lived in Florida a little bit, came back to Delaware, decided to teach some school for 30 years. And when I got out of that, I took a run at politics. Well, that's not really accurate. I actually was a county councilman for 4 terms. And when I retired from education, I felt like it was time to elevate my game. Stepped up, ran for the Senate, was fortunate enough to win. I always say God has a plan, and that was his plan, and I'm just following it.
Oh, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's stuff for it. And, you know, Rodney, if you have something for the Senator, I know we're going to let you ask your questions, and, you know, we're going to tag team and stuff.
Well, listen, I'm telling you, anytime he's running, bro, I'm going to tell you, it's a diehard deep, but when I tell you one of the best Republicans that understand, you know, a lot of what's going on around this state and realistically got his fingers on the pulse, I'm telling you, I'm always in support of Senator Buckson, will be in support of him, staunch supporter. Whatever he need me to do, I'm in, because he showed me that he's a realist. You know, he's not as we say in our community, pump faker. You know, he say what he means what he say. So right. As everybody plagiarize the truth, reinvent the truth, recreate the truth, all for the intense purposes of introducing a well-dressed lie, well, that's the naked truth. You understand? Right. He's for real. I'm telling you right now. Okay? So, hey, so sit back and see.
Here's the thing, man, and this is what folks I've always appreciated. It's going to come back to you. You know? You try and calculate what to say to folks. You try to be make sure that you get the right words so that they hear they want to hear from you. It catches up to you, man. Right. You know, it's hard to remember a lie. What you said, you know, it's not hard to remember the truth.
That's right.
And I have learned, I really have, that folks will respect, and I know I feel this way. They'll respect you even if they don't like what you had to say.
That's right.
If you're just being straight with them and honest, you're not attacking, you're not, you know, trying to force an argument. You're just saying, look, this is where I am, you know. And if we're not going to line up, it's all good. Let's find something we do line up on. That's where I like to be. But I see too many folks, politicians. I see it, man. They get hung up because they get in a room, they get in deep water. I always call it deep water. You get in a room that makes you uncomfortable. You're out there in that deep water, and you start trying to figure out ways to say everything you can to get them off you, and that's the last thing you do.
Right.
So, you know, just stay the course. You know, be fair, be honest, be open, and let the chips fall.
There you go.
And that's so important that we do that. And Senator Buckson, we just like to share the truth, educate the folks, give them the opportunity to find out what's going around in the wonderful first state of Delaware, and see what it's all about. And I know you see a lot of stuff happening, but we like to talk about that housing market. You know, right. You know, affordable housing is a big project. You know, everybody seems to want to be on that agenda. What do you think we can do with this affordable housing and this housing market we're in right now?
That's a great question. I mean, that's the golden question, right? And I know that the state of Delaware, heck, the country, spent a lot of time analyzing best practices and ways that we can address the issues. And there's multifaceted, right? You know, you can talk about what do you mean by affordable? that are affordable for people to buy and live in, to rent and live in. What are you talking about? Are you talking about existing ones that you want to renovate? Or are you talking about new structures?
Right.
You know, there's different spaces there. I don't necessarily want to demonize renting. If you study the finances from people smarter than me, that's not necessarily, a bad angle to be in. And home ownership isn't always the key, right, to be in. So again, I'm not answering your question yet. I'm going to try in a second. It's to say that that's a big question, right? A big question. I think zoning has a lot to do with it. I think not in my backyard has a lot to do with it. I think that when you talk about incentivizing affordable housing, whether it's renting or purchasing, the builders, the private sector, they're not the problem. I think they would come on board. The challenge with affordable housing and getting things approved under new construction is always traditionally the public hearings and folks who show up concerned with what that may mean to them and their space, right? So how do you overcome that? You got to address the issue of buy right purchases and locations that are set up specifically for new construction and affordable housing. You've got to incentivize the, I guess we'll call it the remodeling of, or the bringing back to life of areas that are already maybe areas conducive to affordable housing. They maybe have existing housing in it that they've been left kind of to fall into disrepair. But I guess what I'm getting at is when you look at it from a government fix, what does affordable housing mean? There's only so much you can do. We can address land use and rezoning. We can incentivize it through financial components, specialty loans, and incentivizing developers to come in. Those are two or three things. Or then we can just do the traditional, which is the government type housing. And what does that mean? Government housing that doesn't include, or even affordable housing that doesn't also include the individual benefiting from that, also benefiting from support services. What are support services? It could be something as basic as, healthcare and locations next to workplace. It can also be things as simple as education and connecting them to, viable, I guess we'll call it paths forward that allow them to climb out of that space that says affordable housing. We have folks that are trapped in affordable housing.
Wow.
Right. And we do. They're trapped. And it's a combination of things. They don't see a path forward, or the mindset that they have based on the way we've created some of these programs has kind of trapped them. This is the way it is. This is the best I've got. I'm just going to have to accept it and remain in this space. How do we help folks to climb out? I tell you what I don't want to do. I want to make sure I answer the questions correct. Again, I'm not an expert, but if I danced around it in any way, if I didn't give you a good answer, man, come back at me, because I want to better articulate what I mean. All right.
I mean, that was a great answer. I mean, that was a great understanding of people stuck in a pocket and trying to understand how to get out of it. And I'm in total agreement. They have to figure out a way to keep moving on for that, to get into a better situation, especially with this market. And, like you said, some people are renters, some people are homeowners. You just got to pick your appetite for that. And I think that's what we look at. But, a lot of folks believe that, and we just can get your opinion on this, believe that, this affordable housing shouldn't be every place. We should just put it certain places, and want to get your thought on that.
Good. Give a thought.
And when I say that, we take for granted, in some of our cities, where we have those frontline workers for McDonald's and fast food and daycares and stuff like that, for us to have those people around, they're going to have to find something that's affordable. And people think they just need to travel to those locations and stuff, where I think we should have something in that area so it can suffice.
Yeah. That's why I said rent, affordable housing in terms of renting, affordable housing in terms of home ownership. And they're two separate lanes.
Right.
And I do believe that we shouldn't get overly fixated on finding a way to get somebody to purchase a home, regardless of your situation.
Right.
Because you can invest significant amounts of dollars in a home that if you don't extend the life of living there, you'd have been better off renting at this rate in a maintained dwelling or place, and then investing those dollars in maybe the market or other areas of wealth that you can grow your money in separate from just a home. I've lived in my home 18, 19 years. I would suggest that in that time, I've probably now, my investment in that home is now equated to a couple $100,000. There are people out there that would argue that that mortgage payment that I had I been able to shave off a couple $100 and invested that in the market during the same time frame, would have maybe been equal to, if not better. So there's different levels of that. And I by no means am a financial advisor. I just don't want to demonize every aspect. I think folks need to do what's best for them when it comes to that. When it comes to affordable housing, in that entry level area that you're talking about, when it comes to fast food workers and stuff like that, the reality is, and this is just my take, the problem that we had a perfect storm. We had a moment in time where there were this great push to move to a $15 an hour. And I say fictional rate only because it came out of the cities of San Francisco and New York. $15 an hour is a must-have.
Right.
And I would argue they're not wrong. The problem is you took that narrative and now you applied it to Harrington, Delaware. And you've applied it to Woodside, Delaware. And so now you're flipping the market. At the same time, we had a pandemic. And the pandemic injected into the economy what you could argue was fantasy money. My kids got it. I had a daughter in college. She was working part-time on a table, doing tables, making decent money, a few $100 a week. The government during the pandemic was giving her $950 some.
Wow.
And when I asked what we doing, they said, that's just the formula. Right. My son, the same thing. What happened there is you flooded the market. The same time you did that with all this money, you had investors come in and buy up all this, what I would call, quote, affordable housing to work on their passive income portfolios.
Oh, wow.
So now you've got, right? So now you've got an inflated market in the economy as far as $15 an hour that we're dealing with now. You've got all that excess funds that was what I called unearned money. It was. Right. Heck, I benefited from it. Right. And then on top of that, you had this.
We lost him for a second. You're on mute, Rod. Yeah, it's just amazing.
Yeah,
that
he's probably in a bad area.
Yeah. But that was an interesting conversation he was having right there, where they flooded that market with this money. And go ahead, send Buckson. We lost you. Go ahead.
So it's kind of weird because some folks, if they're listening, like, man, he's all over the place. Check it out. Let me try and circle in.
You're
right. Because it does matter, because you start to flip the market up, and then what do you have? You're competing for dollars. You're making more money per hour. Your paycheck is bigger. Your salary at the end of the year is bigger, but you're earning less. Think about it. You're not really earning less, but yeah, you are, because at the end of the day, I don't care if I earn $2 an hour or $200 an hour. If it costs me the same equivalent to buy gas or groceries, or rent, specifically rent, I'm not really making more money at all. So yeah, what happened was you had investors come in from all over the place, buying up all these homes. And what they were doing now is they're revitalizing them, and then they're entering into the government subsidized markets at an elevated rate. You now have homes that the rent rate for some of these homes are $1,800 for a 950 square foot house.
Wow.
In the middle of And how does that happen? It's because of a government intervention trying to do good that has unintended consequences.
Right.
You've injected the market with heavy dollars.
Mm-hmm.
You've got this investor craze that went wild. I was a realtor. I lived it. I represented folks who were buying these things up, and I saw what was wrong. I asked why they were, how the numbers were working. They told me about the guaranteed payments and things like that. And lastly, the $15 an hour really is now 17, is now 35, because when you set the floor
Mm-hmm.
for the McDonald's worker, you've now set the floor for the manager at a local retail store, or the business manager at a company, or a state employee at level XYZ. You reset the floor for everybody. So all you did was trade dollars. It maybe
Right.
even worse, because with inflation being as bad as it is, think about it. With it being as bad as it is, you've actually made it worse. You're making more money, but you're able to buy even less. I mean, the average rent, good Lord, the average rent, $1,600. That's more than my mortgage on a 3,000 square foot home.
Wow.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a whole different appetite. And go ahead, Rod. I know
Yeah,
you.
no, not to cut him off, but you know me, run for time. But I want to hear a little bit more, Senator Buckson. I was just sharing with the audience how you're putting together the Harriet Tubman exhibit, right here in Delaware. Could you just expound to let everybody know the initiative that you're taking in terms of trying to make sure that the history and the culture of African Americans, Black folks, continue to keep, some of the history alive here in Delaware?
So it's a powerful initiative that I would like to partner with many folks to bring to fruition. In Kent County, Delaware, we have this park called the Hun Park, or the Hun property. A guy named John Hun. He was an abolitionist who lost everything trying to work with the Underground Railroad to secure the freedom of slaves who were working north through slave states into free states, Delaware having been one of them at that time, to gain their freedom even further north in states like Pennsylvania and up further north. He lost everything in that space, in that journey, because at that time it was a federal crime, because that was considered a theft of property. As you guys can appreciate, literally, if you were in possession of a, quote, back then, a slave who was seeking his freedom or her freedom, and you were assisting in that, it was considered theft, and he was charged with a federal crime and lost all of it. Well, anyway, the long of it is, the property that was his former home, the county now owns, Kent County owns. It's along the St. Jones, and if you're familiar with the Underground Railroad, you know that a lot of it wasn't railroads, but actually riverbanks and actually waterways like the St. Jones. And so the idea is to create a destination point for school-age kids to adults of all ages to come to Kent County to visit his home, his property that's connected to the St. Jones, create a destination point that tells the story of what it meant to be a person caught up in slavery, who was seeking their freedom, who was moving through this Underground Railroad that actually literally went through parts of Delaware, including this area. Tell that story and give kids a chance for an outdoor space. Allow for adults who visit the Capitol to come over and tour that space. It would be a fascinating journey that these young folks and old folks and the educational experience, not only does Kent County not have it, but the state of Delaware doesn't have that type of cultural experience. They literally, the road that led to the waterway near his house, it's not more than a couple hundred yards. That was considered, forgive me, I don't recall the name of it, was almost a kind of a town where some of the individuals, after the issue of slavery had been somewhat settled, resided and created commerce along that road. You could build the sort of, and I call them huts because they were no better than, fabricated small sheds that they lived in, but to their credit, carved out an existence. They could visit those types of places and tell that story. They could move up towards the house. You could literally look at the basement as where they would somewhat hide out at times. And then they would go out to the water, and you could see the challenges they face, because that's scary out there. If you're out there at night, you see the path that they had to take to simply gain their freedom. Powerful educational tool that we could have here on the cheap, because we own it. The county owns it. They'd be willing to partner with us, the state.
Wow. That's an awesome project.
Yeah. So we had a great meeting that he assembled at Lake Hall with some of the folks that that have a lot of history, that understands a lot of history. So Senator Buckson, with his leadership, has assembled like minds to help get this thing off the ground, to create that foundation where, we then go and make sure that this vision of his is constructed, and a lot of our children will continue to learn about their history. You know what I'm saying? It's a phenomenal opportunity. I mean, hey, for him to take the leadership on it, to make sure that our history continues to be talked about way after we're gone.
Right.
I've been blessed. I always say this: I'm not here by chance, and to be put in positions where I can try to do things that benefit all communities. As a county councilman, I was blessed to be in a position. I was at Simon's Circle, which is a little tough spot there in the inner city of Dover. And I was familiar with it because I used to get a couple of my wrestlers out of there, tough kids. And I call them the ready-mades, They're ready-made. You don't have to teach that toughness. They're good there. You just got to control it a little bit. But, right. And anyway, so I went to a meeting, and it was the Boys and Girls Club, and they were losing their space there. And after a year and a half of trying, we were able to work with the city, Boys and Girls Club, the county, and now you see what's there on the backside of Camden, which is a massive Boys and Girls Club space, huge, state-of-the-art, that services a lot of kids. Second to that, I was able to work with, we had this Lewis farm out there on the backside of Dover, over by Route 1, and we had a Central Delaware Soccer Association. We had allocated the use of it through a lease to them. And when the turf came to light, they moved over there, and that place was open. And I worked with my man, Lamar Gunn, who now exists out there with the Dream Field. And the Dream Field that we were able to work with him to create, he has taken the lead. And my God, he is servicing, I don't want to say thousands, but at least 1,000, what I would call, many of which are in your toughest areas, kids through lacrosse, tackle football, and other sports, all just by being able to create relationships like I hope I can do with this Harriet Tubman project. Well, the Underground Railroad, or the whatever it is the name shall be. Because this isn't me. I just want to facilitate getting people together that can create this vision and make it happen.
That is so awesome. We're going to take a quick commercial break here. I'm Ford as we come back and continue about that Harriet Tubman. And we just we got Senator Buckson here giving us a whirl of energy. It's exciting.
Let's get it.
It's great to know. But just hold fast. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Right on.
All right.
Awesome here. We thank you. We're back with Senator Buckson, and we just wanted to go back and just talk about this Harriet Tubman. I mean, maybe it was something that you talked about being an educator and going from that, and just want to pick your brain right now to just figure out from when you were in education and teaching that to where we are today. What do you see the biggest difference of where we're at today versus probably 20 years ago?
The grown-ups in the room. True story. It's really what it comes down to. The children haven't changed, except for the fact that we've allowed them to change.
Mm-hmm.
We have become grown-ups that now are convinced that 7, 8-year-olds are on the same level as us and should have the same decision-making capability. And you know what happens when you don't give children guardrails and proper guidance. Children do what children do. And they struggle with it. I call it the swaddling of a child. You know, when a child comes out of the womb and they're newborn and they're screaming, what do they tell you to do? You swaddle the child. You wrap them tight with a blanket, and it provides that comfort. That 7-year-old or 9-year-old that's acting a fool in your class, they're only acting because they need some swaddling. They need to understand that they're cared for, that we love them, but we're going to structure them. We're going to be accountable. We're going to keep them in the guardrails. And these kids need that. They're screaming for it. And we don't see that. We see everything as, I guess, let's allow the child to figure it out.
Right.
When a child is only screaming for, I want somebody to take control because I'm out of control.
Right.
Right. And we say, oh, well, they'll figure it out. Let's let them, so what? If they're struggling in class, so what? If they're struggling with their discipline, so what? If they're not doing right, so what? We just need to hug it to them and love it to them. And I'm telling you, the kids, they're no different than the 7-year-olds when I was a 7-year-old or when you were a 7-year-old.
Right.
What changes is the time frame between when they're 5 and 7 and when they're 15 and 17. That maturation process, we are sending our kids out there ill prepared for the world because we have not allowed them to develop the life calluses that come from something as simple as we're going to hold you accountable, or something as simple as your mouth's going to hold you accountable, right? You go out on the playground or you go on social media, you start running your mouth. Back in the day, we didn't have social media. So you got checked, right? We're now saying that kids don't need to go through all that. And my fear is, I think you do. I do. I really think you do. Mr. Johnson, I walk in his class, I knew one thing. There was no back talking that class.
Right.
Because he was going to check me. And then when I got home, Dad was going to check me.
Check me. Yeah.
Right? But we're demonizing that now. We've legislated that out of the mix now. We've said, oh, no. The old school grandma raising 5 kids. No. You can't do the old school stuff anymore. Bull crap.
Right.
Old school stuff. I get into the details, but you asked me a simple question. That's my point. And that I'm sitting in this parking lot. People keep wanting to pull up and talk. But you asked me what my thoughts are on that, man. The kids of the day aren't the problem. It's the grown-ups managing the kids of the problem. These kids are resilient. If we remind ourselves to rely more on the child's resiliency, we're going to be a whole lot better off. Look, can I share this with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm running muck, but my wife and I were driving down the road today, right outside my development. It's 100 degrees. Now understand, it's 100 degrees. And there is a young kid of African-American descent with jeans on and no shirt running down the road, and I know where he's going. You know why? Because I know his story. How do I know his story? Because I picked him up in the dead of winter when it was pitch black. He was riding his bike home from Goodwill, working. Had a flat tire. Said, young man, I handed my car and I said, listen to me. Your parents are not going to be upset. You show them this car, you tell them that I picked you up, and I promise you, they can't. Well, guess what? They were a little upset. They have decided that that child needs to learn. He's 16 years old. He's got a couple quirky, I call it disabilities. Forgive me the lack of right words. But listen, you know what that kid isn't disabled on? He knows how to get the goodwill on time, work a full set of hours, and find a way back home. And while I didn't agree with the parenting, I had to respect it. What is my point? What is my point? He wouldn't get in the car today. 100 degrees out. He said, Mr. Buckson, Senator Buckson, how are you? You got a new truck. He's talking to me like, and I said, you know what I want? How about I give you a ride? You're a half mile. He goes, Mr. Buckson, I got this far. I'm good. What am I supposed to say? But here's my point, man. That's resiliency. Because of the disability in that child that he's going to have to grow old with, I think God has a plan.
That's right.
As crazy as it may sound, maybe that's the path that young man needs to make so that when his parents aren't there, he can figure it out. And we are taking that type of lesson in life away from many of our kids who are coming from very difficult environments, right? They haven't seen their parents. They haven't had a good meal, right? We're trying to sweep away all of those calluses that they're going through, take them all away. And then when they're 18 and they're still in that same environment, take away all of the support system that they had going through school and say, hey, go figure it out. Go get it life out there. Go get it. And the child's now 19 and goes, I don't know what I'm doing. Somebody help. And now they're acting up. When if we would have better allowed them to go through the resiliency of life. And what does that mean? That means be there to help them, but hold them accountable, right? And they'll thrive off that. Raise the bar on the expectations. Have the consequences when they do wrong. Reward them when they do right. Be there for them at all times and recognize not everybody's going to make it. You do that, and we'll have an improvement.
That is so true and stuff. And I know growing up, that was one of the main things that we had to respect our elders, and we went to school, we came home, we know we had to have that good behavior because the consequences we got in school, we were going to get it back at home too. And it was a support staff. It was a village that kind of raised us and trained us to be better than what we are. And I think that I don't know, and maybe you can comment, maybe it's the shortage of teachers or maybe the teachers overworked, where we have fallen short in our education system for this type of behavior, to nurture these children the way they're supposed to be, and to get them where they can, but being respectful.
Look, when my wrestling coach dug in my behind because I didn't perform, and he was right, there was hard love. That's right. And I needed that. And when I dug into the children that I coached, and listen, I've been to weddings and funerals. I've been to prisons and vacations with some of my best athletes who came from some tough areas back in the 90s. I mean, tough areas. And they thrived off of the fact that they knew I cared, but I was going to hold them accountable. I wasn't going to allow them to lower the bar on their expectations. And we're missing that now. We're taking that element out and we're trying to inject this. I don't know what to say, man, but when they're 7, 8, 9, 10, now they're 15, 16, 17, they just need to know that there's the bar's here. You can make that bar and we're not going to lower it. You know what we're doing now in our schools? We're telling our children that because you can't make a 70 on your whatever class you're taking, that you can pass with a 60. And if that's not bad enough, we're also telling our children that because we know that coming to school can be traumatic, we're not going to give anyone a score of less than a 50, regardless of what you did. So you come to school never for the first half of the year, or you come to school and never do work for the first half of the year, you still get a 50. Why? Because we hope that somehow we can convince you to turn it on the second half and get a 60. And here's what's worse. When you don't get the 60, We put you in a credit recovery course for 2 weeks and allow you to take the equivalent of a full year of education in 2 weeks' time, pass the class, so that we can move you on. And then we wonder what's wrong with our kids. And let me tell you this, it's not the teachers that want that system. They are caught up in an administrative bureaucracy. Now watch this. And the administrative bureaucracy that the school board is under comes from the General Assembly. Yours truly, senators and representatives who have done this to the schools. We're the ones that have taken the structure out. We're the ones that have overwhelmed the classroom instructor with too many requirements outside of just simple X's and O's, teaching math and science. We're the ones that have put all these other add-ons into the classroom that are causing challenges in our schools. And really we become the problem.
Absolutely.
That we don't see. You know, I say it all the time, though. So
that's so amazing just to see that the bar so lowered on what we doing for these kids. I know it was always, you know, you had to have your grades together to play sports. So
yes.
we focus so hard on obtaining those grades because we know we wanted that football, basketball, you know, that baseball. We wanted to be in intramurals and stuff like that. And I think they took a lot of that out of, you know, if the kid don't make the team here for the sports, what happened to our intramural sessions where we used to have it for everybody, that you just sign up and did that to give them that energy to be successful. But we grew up that you had to get a win to get to the next level, and the win started in the classroom.
Exactly. Life is what I describe it as. And it doesn't come from new best practices and the next smartest person in the room. It comes with this new study. You don't need that. We need the old school. Here's the key. If you take 100 kids and send them to school, let's say we have a 100-person high school. I understand that 10% of that 100, they're hardwired to just do great. They just got it in them. They got God-given talent. There's 10% at the bottom they're going to struggle. But it's that middle pack right now of 80 students that we're losing. And we're losing it because we're lowering the bar, not for the 10% that are always going to be the great learners, because they're not going to lower their bar, but for that 80%, we're going to lower it so that the 10% that need specialized care don't feel bad, that they have company, that, hey, you're not alone in this fight. Well, you are alone. You're alone. Your struggle's the same, but now you've just added people to it. And it makes no sense to me when we do this stuff, because those kids, those are the grinders. The world is full of kids who are good at math, not great. Good at English, not great. Good at science, not great. And you know what? When you're good at those things, you can be great at life.
That's right.
You can be great at life. You know, it's not measured by, if you got a 75 and earned it in math class, a whole lot better than a 95 in math you didn't earn, even though it's on paper. The struggles that you went through, the life calluses. I went to a function over in Star Hill, man. I used to call it the Hill. I don't know if any folks from Kent County, but these are some of my best buddies. And one of the kids that I coached in wrestling, a kid named Tony Brinkley, should have been a state champion. His mother came up to me. This has got to be 20 years later. We're at a function, and she said, I want you to know you saved my son. I said, what do you mean? He said, he failed math. He failed off your team, and you didn't let him go. You made him come to practice. You made him do his schoolwork, and you made him stay in the fight, even though he couldn't wrestle. And that was that life callus. Could have easily dropped. If he had not failed, if somebody had given him that grade, he never would have developed that life callus that I think God has a plan for.
Right.
For all people. I really do.
That's so interesting. We had a question there about one of our audience guests. I think Doug said, what do you think about the main objective of passing a child on that does not deserve to pass to the next grade is all about? What's your opinion? Why are we doing that? Passing them on because we don't want to see them left behind, or
Yes. So 2 things. No Child Left Behind was a legislative act under Bush that was detrimental. It looked great on paper. It really harmed us. You move fast forward up to the Markell administration and race to the top. These are all technical things you're asking me about. But all of those things, when you follow the numbers, created this cascading downward spiral that all we're doing is throwing more money at a problem that we can't cure, right?
Right.
That's the big thing. Because legislatively, why is it that we want to find ways to pass kids? It makes us feel better. It looks good on paper, and paper matters because for a school district and administration, the legislators, remember myself, senators, I wasn't there, but I'll take the hit. Senators like myself, representatives like, other representatives, we passed legislation that we think was going to improve education that said to the school districts, if you have a failing report card, meaning you have students that are failing at an exaggerated rate. If you have a graduation rate that's less than this, we're going to come in as a government agency and take over your schools, right? We said that to them. So what do? They do what they have to do. They have to manipulate the system, move a 70 to a 60, create the credit recovery so that they can report data that says to the state, no. Our kids are passing fine. We've got a 89% graduation rate or 94% graduation rate. We've got 95% of our kids all have algebra 2 and higher math. No, they don't. They got the credit. They don't know what the hell it is, but they got it.
Right.
Think about it. That's true story. And that's what we're doing wrong. If you ask the teachers, they'll tell you that. They'll tell you this is wrong. Heck, the administration will tell you it's wrong. But until we change it at the legislative slate, I think we're going to be hung up, man. I really do. It's a shame because at the end, when all the dust settles and the smoke clears, what's left is a child that's now grown up that we've done a disservice to. We really have.
And that's terrible. I still remember Senator Buckson growing up, and I love sports, and I just said, man, long as I pass that test, I'm going to be able to play. And Coach Smith, he came and he found out, he said, you passed the test, but you wasn't in class. He said, but I'm going to let you understand what it feels like of how important it was to sit there. And we played that game, and I sat on that bench, and I was so eager to go in that game and stuff.
What life lesson?
Yeah. And he said, and he told me, he said, we got to play with 4 people. You won't play
life lesson.
Yeah. Guess what? I showed up for class. I made it a priority to, hey, if I want to do this, I'm showing up for class. I'm performing what I need to do because you know what? It's not an option. It's not an option.
It's not. Here's the thing, man. I appreciate you asking these questions. I want to get back to that housing thing in a sec. But anyway, here's the thing that fires me up with that is these kids, they will respond to this. It's not the fact that you had to sit the bench in that moment in time. It's that you're here X amount of years later and that lesson is still with you. Those are the calluses that our children and you, when you were a child and then move through whatever struggles you may or not go through, may or may not have had to go through. You had those lessons in life to help you go through them. Our kids aren't getting them now. I don't care if they're coming from the most hardened areas or the best areas. All kids need to go through stuff. And when we don't allow them to do something, I used to say as simple as falling from a monkey bar or having to deal with a bully. One of the worst things we did was we went to zero tolerance for bullying. And I hope anybody listen's going to go, this guy's lost his mind. Bullying's horrible. And you know what I told him? Yeah, but here's my point. Bullying is bad. Bullying is a consistent and repetitive, willful attempt to bring hate, harm, discontent to you. A child facing another child who's just being a jerk is not bullying. That is a vital part of a life lesson that child needs to go through, where that child learns to either back up go around or go through.
Mm-hmm.
And we are taking all those things away. And when you take those things away, then what you get is you get these kids who have never been checked.
Mm-hmm.
Never.
Right.
So you see them when they're interacting with adults, not just police, but I'm talking about teachers or parents or a grown-up at a function. They go crazy on you because they've never been stopped. And when they do finally get checked, what do? They become emotional.
No.
They cry and they start to say, okay, I said I'm sorry. When can I get up and go back and do whatever I want?
Right.
That's literally what happens. They start to go to a point where they say, wait a minute, I acted out of control.
Cool.
I finally calmed down. I've said I'm sorry. Why isn't that good enough? Because that's the way they're treated in schools. That's good enough. Calm down. Would you like to go say you're sorry to the teacher? Yes, I would. Okay, fine. Now you can go back to class. And in our day, when it worked, yeah. Hey, number one, you're not doing that. Number two, you're not going back.
That's right.
Not until you figured this out. And that child benefited greatly from it. Now, here's the problem. I'm with this one. Here's the key. Nothing that I've said tonight or will ever say to whether I was teaching kids or talking to individuals is absolute. Nothing. I am not claiming that what I said is perfect. There will be outliers.
Absolutely.
But here's the reality. Some people don't make it. Whether it's a child, whether it's a grown-up, it is a hard thing to say, especially in a live feed right now. I don't know who's listening. But regrettably, not everybody makes it. And if your system is to make everybody make it, you get what I see, which is no child left behind. And what happens is you end up harming the entire system.
That's right.
The good on the paper turns into bad in reality.
Yeah.
It just does.
And Senator Buckson, that's so good. That leads me back to our home topic because, you know, even with them not left behind, you know, sometimes it's a system we think we should give people stuff, you know. So when we talk about this housing market, you know, some people that stay stuck in that affordable means have no desire to go to the next step. And we stay stuck in this environment and we almost looking for a handout sometimes.
And the individuals, remember, not absolute. Many of the individuals that are stuck in that space where they think their mindset is that I have to have the handout are only guilty of a system that has incentivized that, that has encouraged and enabled them to do that, right? But you always have an element that needs to fail, meaning you've got to get to a point where I'm sorry, we can no longer provide for you. You've got to go. But in that mix are those individuals that have simply been incentivized to stay. So how do we incentivize or encourage them to climb out of the hole? The argument that I've often made is that we've got to create a tiered system. We've got to create a tiered system that says that we're going to provide this level of assistance here, but we're going to start to wean you off. Because that's the only way you create the incentive to get them out. If you don't, right? If you don't, here's what happens. Person A doesn't work hard, is getting the vouchers, getting the housing for whatever subsidy is free, and they're getting that, and they're not working to better themselves. Person B, the place next to them, is getting the same assistance, but is bettering themselves. Here's the problem. They better themselves to a point that they work their way out of the system and then they fall off the system.
Right.
And so their point is, what was the reward for busting my tail and getting myself better if the only thing it did was make myself equal to the person doing nothing?
Right.
Right. And that's how we've got to get away from that, because to me, is keeping people trapped is keeping them in the mindset they've got nothing better. You know, Les Brown I love this guy. I don't know if you've ever listened to him speak.
Yeah, Les Brown's good. Yeah.
Powerful, man. I listen to these guys when I'm cutting grass to that, but I do. And he said something that stuck with me. He was in a inner city getting ready to give a speech to a community city council, private investors. And they took him to what would be, I guess, for lack of a better words, a housing project and what was a $20 to $50 million revitalization of a housing project. Beautiful. They redid it, did the roofs, painted everything, fixed it all, modernized it. And they were showing it to him, and he seemed subdued. And they said, "What's the problem?" And he said, "It's not so much of a problem, but hear me out." He said, "If you don't change the mindset and the culture of the folks that are inside there, we'll be back here in 25 years doing the same thing." And it stuck with me. That struck me. I'm like, you know what? He's not wrong. How do we get people to figure out a path forward and climb out of it? And remember, I mentioned the $15 an hour. Here's my problem with that $15 an hour that you guys brought up. It gets people stuck. The problem isn't $15 an hour and $8 an hour. The problem is getting folks to understand that if you have a skill set, if you're in a world in this day and age right now where you can bring to an employer a clear and consistent pattern of showing up on time and working till the job's over and doing that consistently, that is a skill set in this day and age where you don't belong in an entry-level position for very long, because that is a portable skill. And what we've got to do is get those folks connected to the next level jobs. That's what the problem is. I can't get the manager, or not even the manager, but the cashier who's worked a year at McDonald's consistently showing up on time, doing the job until it's over with, who's now making $15.75, when the reality is that skill in this day and age is such a rarity that we should be able to connect them to the next, whether it's the warehouse that has healthcare packages or anything else. I had a guy, I'm sitting over at Leg Hall, and he's a good dude. He's been there 10 years, and he cleans the offices when we're done, right? When the legislators are out of there, they come in. I'm there late. He walked in. He said, "Senator Buckson," this is before they had elevated their rate. He said, "We're stuck. We can cap out at $12.25. That's the highest we're going." He said, "I'd really like to see us. Can we get to that $15 an hour faster?" And I said, "Yes, I can see what I can do. But let me ask you something. How long you been here?" He said, 10 years. 10 years. In that 10 years time, have you ever been written up? No. You do a great job. You're not even supervised, right? He said, "Nah, I just do my job." I said, "Man, no disrespect, but do you understand that the level of skill you bring to a job far past this one? Yeah. You've got to get out of your comfort zone. You have a skill set bigger than this. I'm not saying that what you're doing isn't valuable to me. It is. But my God, my friend, you don't need to be here. We need to get you into the next level. How do we do that?" That's what I'm talking about.
That's right. And that's what's so important. Getting to the next level, that commitment they have to what they're doing. And we got to get folks to look at that next step to where they should be progressing and not staying there.
Believe in them, believe in them, and get them to believe in themselves, right? Because they got a choice. You think about it. They're surrounded by individuals, regardless of where you are. The lines of color are getting blurred when it comes to things like poverty and embetterment, because the social programs, I've always argued, we are now in a space where we are starting to add more and more people. And the problem with that is money is finite, right? Not infinite. And the problem with that is you start adding people that don't belong, it makes it harder to help the people that can't help themselves.
That's
and
right.
What happens is, in that space, when you start to add more people, those people that are trying to climb out, it's really hard when you get to that point where you're going to break out. You're at a point in time right there where you're either going to break out or you're going to look around and say, "What's the point? I'm going to grind to get to the next level. And the people that I'm leaving, I'm not much better than them, and they're getting it for nothing. They're doing whatever it is they want to do." And that's hard to change mindsets when you leave that system in place. And again, there are folks maybe listening, and I can't see the chat. I don't have my glasses on, but here's my point. I'm not trying to be offensive to anybody. I'm not trying to be an expert. I'm just spitting it out there. This is what my thoughts are.
Yes.
Right on. So.
And that's so important. Like Chuck said that, we sometimes we fail people by not encouraging them to step up to the next level of what they're doing. And we had another host said it needs to we need to have these conversations because people need to understand, and our audience need to know it's a lot of things. Isabel says so much of that is missing with employees. They take for granted loyalty of committed employees, where people have come on and worked for years and years and did their job and haven't seen the next level and just looking for the little things. And we have to push them to those bigger things. Like you talked about that gentleman in there at 1225. I mean, we need somebody 10 years. You should be leading somebody to encourage them how they came to work for 10 years straight.
Yeah. I told the state, I'm on the Joint Finance at the Budget Committee. The Department of Labor comes in, they're talking about their shortfalls in staffing and all that. I said, listen, how about you start a headhunter? What do you mean? I said, start a headhunter group within your organization that targets state employees at the lowest levels or entry-level positions who have shown themselves to be good employees. How about you go out there and you recruit them to move up into higher level positions? That's how you grow, folks. That's how you move people within our own system and encourage them to step outside their comfort zone. To me, those are the things that you can do to help people empower and better themselves. My fear is, God, it's just, I see these lives and these folks and they're being convinced, not even being convinced, they're being just told from an early age. Remember we talked about kids, the lessons these kids learn in school by being held, to an expectation and held accountable and suffer the consequences when they don't. And people that step in and try to give them ladders to climb and not just lift them. You know what I mean? Because it's so important. I love talking about little things in life, but you can't, I always tell folks, you can't teach people to pray for a hole while they're leaning against a shovel.
That's right.
You can, and I use the term, I say these things on purpose, but there's a verse basically talks about, Jesus at the healing water, and he's talking to the man who's disabled, he's crippled. And he doesn't grab him. He looks at him and says, you've been here 35 years. Are you serious about your healing? Are you serious? Because if you are, get up and we can help you, but I can't do it for you. Think about that. I can't do it for you. We have to do it together. The problem is in government, we have folks who feel bad for others and try to do it for them. And they don't see that it's actually harming them. It's harming them. I want systems set up that we can partner with folks and help them lift themselves up, not just convince them that they can't lift up, that we have to give them, and again, not absolute. I'm not saying that there aren't folks in the space that need help. We need to be great at helping those that can't help themselves. That's right. And Rhonda said something, said good leaders promote their staff accordingly. Yes. Sometimes people get stuck because their leaders scared that they might overstep them, but that's okay. I learned one thing growing up, and while I was at Southwest Airlines, my leader told me, he's like, man, once I promote you, I know we got some longevity because the next step of what we need to do, and we got to keep people growing in that manner. From that side. But Senator Buckson, man, I am honored. I'm thankful that you came on, shared that wealth of knowledge with us, and gave us some insight on where we at and how we should grow. And I'm going to give you a chance for some last comments of, that our audience, they're quiet, but they're listening and they're trying to really find out where they fit in or what they can do to make a change. But with so much happening in Delaware, my goal is to make Delaware number one again, not only the first state, but number one education, housing, and to build a standard that we can pass on. And we're going to give you your final comments before we end our broadcast. Believe in the people that you're trying to help. Believe that they can help themselves if you're there to support with them, whether it's a child or a grown-up. Believe in them. I just believe. I just do. I think that folks, despite their stories, there's a lot of good in people. And I think if you can provide not just hope, but hope that has a path forward, that you'll see folks that will go that direction. I do. I just believe that. And again, regrettably, not everybody makes it. And that's the reality. We have to understand that. You mentioned knowledge. The thing that I try and humble myself with is this. Being a senator doesn't make me automatically smart. It doesn't make me right. It does give me an opportunity to join you fine folks and tell you what I might think. But understand this. I respect the fact that what I think and what I may know are two different things. That's why I share with you what I think, and I listen to and try to hear from those that maybe know more, that maybe have a different thought, a different opinion. I want to hear from you. I like to know. I never pretend to be absolute in what I'm saying. I value this conversation, man. I really do.
Yeah, we value it. We thank y'all so much for attending tonight. We thank Senator Buckson taking time out his busy schedule to join us on today. And we ask you to leave with one thing: believe that we can make a change. We can be better. We can be more whole, and that we're going to be great. And we will see y'all next week. Thanks again for attending Creative Finance with Johnnie Bazemore. Look forward to seeing y'all next week again. Have a great evening. Thanks.
Thank you.